Just before we begin this video, I'd like to let people know that by becoming a patron or donating £5 or more, you'll be given special access to my unreleased review on Western anime theme songs. Links in the description below. Hello everybody, my name is Nick Starwind and welcome to part 2 of our special, where, in celebration of the 1 year anniversary of The Missing Coach Part 3, I have decided to spend every week of this month looking at the plethora of Thomas the Tank Engine games, starting from its earliest days to the most recent editions. Last time we began our series by looking into the world of DOS and Amiga games, and how alternative software seems to have had a heavy hand in the development of a lot of these games. But, despite early whatever that is, they were able to bounce back with some lovely games. Also, don't forget that for the games we cover each week, we'll be playing over on my Twitch channel every Thursday at twitch.tv/StarwindStreams to give you a better look into the variety of games we will be covering. So, with that being said, let's move away from floppy disks and pull out some good old-fashioned cartridge consoles from the greats, and hope that I won't be spending the review blowing into the cartridges for hours on end. So while alternative software was developing Thomas games for the Amiga and DOS, around the time of the production between Thomas the Tank Engine and Friends and Thomas's Big Race, another video game developer known as Software Creations was creating a game of their own for Nintendo under THQ, another golden boy from back in the day of gaming. Unlike the 3 games I mentioned, Software Creations decided to make the most basic game possible and release in 1993 the Adventure series on Super Nintendo, with originally a planned release for the Nintendo Entertainment System in the same year, but due to less demand in the West for the NES, after its completion it was shelved in favour of the other. However, in the coming years, a ROM would be dumped onto the internet showcasing what could have been, and from the looks of it, it's just your bog standard NES game, with some interesting sprite work, cute music, and its contents definitely more suited to that console, unlike its Super Nintendo counterpart. I am not going to sugarcoat this. This game is utter garbage. Aside from the opening titles, which probably takes up majority of the cartridge space with how detailed it is, this mini gameathon is the bare minimum of a cash grab. When you compare it to these games, you can clearly tell the amount, or lack of, effort put into making this game. This is why I said the NES version was better, because with its limited space, I wouldn't expect any less from a Thomas game on there, especially when you look at the LJN library. But this is a Super Nintendo game. This console had way more power and enough games in its library to prove that you could make something that was closer to the Amiga games than whatever the hell this is. So, when you boot the game up, you are given the selection screen where you can manually select the games yourself, or give yourself time to make a drink by letting Thomas crawl around the board. You have 8 mini-games to choose from, one of them being a read-along and another one being a questionnaire for the story you just read, so essentially you actually have 6 mini-games to play, clearly using more cartridge space than Super Mario RPG. You've got a sliding puzzle, you've got a regular puzzle, you've got 2 races which are exactly the same but with different characters, a switch game, a track layout game, and not a single one involving driving Thomas freely, and more or less a test of your patience while you wait for each section to load. The games are short, the difficulty is laughable because a toddler could do the hardest difficulty, whereas an 8-year-old would rather play something else. The sprite work is demonic, and with how slow the cursor moves, you'll be bored before you manage to reach the end, which, if you time it right, only takes around 10 minutes to complete with 0 replay value. Just imagine you've been blessed with the Amiga games and your friend, the Nintendo fan, asks you round to play this. You'd think this game came out before yours because this is the case of 1 step forward, 20 steps back. How anyone thought this was a good idea doesn't deserve their job. The fact that this game was on a console that made Star Fox and Yoshi's Island is all the more shocking. But, before you defend it by saying it's meant for children, another Thomas game was released by THQ on the Genesis that further proves how lazy this is. In 1993, the exact same year as this mess, Malibu Interactive was put in charge of developing the Sega version of the Adventure series for American release only, and clearly they were given just the title of the game and nothing else, because unlike Software Creations, they went in a similar direction to the Amiga games, upgrading the graphics and in a way fusing both of the titles into one game, and guess what? It is good. Centered more around Season 1 and 2 of the show, as Season 3 had only just begun screening the second half of its episodes in the US, you choose between 5 characters and either do a selection of challenges involving fetching different rolling stock and delivering them in a particular order, racing different engines across the island, or simply running around the map doing what you feel like. This is exactly what you want from a Thomas game. Not only do you get the challenges with the 3 level difficulties, but you can also just be a Thomas character and make your way around the 4 connected areas of this railway, either just exploring every corner of the island, or pretend you're doing tasks for the Fat Controller and collect coaches and trucks for fun. It doesn't have to be that hard to figure out. The sprites are brilliant. Yes, the faces that appear on the side are a bit dodgy looking, but when you consider how much effort was put into the layout and design of this game, I can forgive this compared to that game. I feel this is an unofficial sequel to the Amiga games in terms of its presentation, its replay value, and sticking to the core aspects of the series and not completely missing the mark. And it is a damn shame this was not released outside of the US. Although the good news is that if anyone wishes to play it elsewhere, the cartridge is supposed to be region free, so I would highly recommend you get a copy. And one for me too, because I'm broke. The only downside of this game is the lack of multiplayer, but I feel that could be a restriction in the development time of the game, and if they had more time they could have probably implemented it and making it a much more solid game than it already is. So, Malibu Interactive understood their assignment and gave us a solid game, whereas Software Creations will definitely be staying after class. But guess which of these two is the rarer game? If you remember what happened with the Grandstand handheld, you know it is of course the worst game of the two, because why not? Let's own nothing but expensive garbage. What are you, FIFA fans or something? But to give Nintendo the benefit of the doubt, there was another game released that made up in some ways for this abomination, and sadly it was only an exclusive Japan release. Fast forward to 2001, and despite the fact that the Game Boy Advance had just been released in Japan, the Game Boy Color still had a few surprises in store for its fans, as Tamsoft, a company known for developing games primarily for PlayStation, released Kikansha Thomas Sodor Toyo no Nakamatachi, or the Friends of Sodor, in the autumn of that year. Unlike its Super Nintendo counterpart, they decided to go into a similar direction to Sega and release a top-down exploration game which sees Thomas exploring different parts of the island, fixing tracks, meeting different characters, and doing various tasks for them. And believe me, for a game on the Game Boy Color, it manages to do this well. You have 5 areas to explore, each with various characters from the first 5 seasons, where you either just chat to them, fetch an item for them, or fix the track ahead so they can get to their destination, usually ending in a big mini-game to finish the level, either involving a race or getting to the end of a stage before the timer runs out. As the levels progress, so do the number of minigames scattered throughout, with some characters hiding that can only be accessed by blowing your whistle, finding an item that initiates a minigame, or talking to a different character to enable the interaction with the other, leading to you disturbing the peace by constantly whistling, running in circles around the area. Of course, much like Kikansha Thomas and Nakamatachi, there is a ton of dialogue, which for someone who knows basic kanji, I have no clue what they are saying, but I can hazard a guess that they are either directing you to a task ahead or just quoting a line from the series, as there isn't a lot of control direction, making minigames such as the racing one a bit of a toughie to figure out. I think the presentation of this game is actually pretty cute, as although the sprites for the engines are similar to the ones used in the NES game, with it being an 8-bit console, the portrait expressions are very much a mixture between the series with a bit of anime flair to it, giving it a much more kid-friendly look to it and not haunting our dreams like the other game. Yes, for a 2001 game it is pretty basic by comparison, but for a Thomas game it does a pretty good job, and has plenty of variety for a kid to enjoy, lasting at least over 30 minutes in gameplay, and I feel that this was released outside of Japan it would have done pretty well, similar to if the Sega Adventure series hadn't have just been an exclusive release as well. You can easily get an emulation for this game, as a physical copy is hard to come by, but if you feel like a bit of variety then I would highly recommend getting it and giving it a go. And that is another 3 games completed, which was quite an interesting variety to what we had before, with one game being completely boring as hell, while the other 2 were actually interesting to play, with the Genesis version proving that once again Sega does what Nintendo don't. And, as you will see later, this won't be the last we hear from Sega, as there are plenty of other Japan exclusives we have yet to cover. If you would like to see more of these games, then remember to check out my Twitch channel in the links below every Thursday of this month. But until then, that is the end of part 2 of our anniversary special. I hope you enjoyed it, and tune in for next week's episode where we jump back onto the computer for some good old fashioned CD-ROM nostalgia. As always, to remember to like, share, subscribe, stick it on a badger, attach it to a brick, mail it to a bomb because they like a surprise, and if you can, spare some change, governor, by donating the links below. And remember, by becoming a Patreon or donating £5 or more, you get access to the unreleased review on Western anime themes. But until then, I've been Nick Starwind, you have been my audience, and I shall see you next time.